Now, do you think that we need to, when I say we, meaning a non-English speaker, do we need to learn English from a native speaker, or it's not really necessary?
I think the issue is we need to learn English from someone who speaks English well and who is a good teacher. Now, that would apply to many, many Korean teachers. They speak English well and they're good teachers. Not all native speakers are necessarily good teachers because it's a skill you have to acquire through training and so on. So the issue is the teacher doesn't need to speak English to the same standard as a native speaker. I think most of the world's English teachers are people who've learned it as a second language. They're not native speakers. It's useful, of course, to have the native speaker input as well. But the main thing is to be a good teacher. So
now, my question is this. If you're barely starting to learn how to speak English, what's the most important thing you need to do to improve your English? Is it reading or talking to someone who speaks English well? Or
you've got to have the mechanics, the building blocks and vocabulary and grammar and so on. You've got to have those building blocks in place. But then you have to learn how to draw on that knowledge in communication, and you can only do that through practice, through interacting. It needn't be with a native speaker, it could be with a classmate in an activity that the teacher has set up. A lot of input, a lot of exposure through video, through other sources from the books and so on. So certainly that's my experience from learning languages that I speak, and probably yours as well, that until you really have a chance to use the language communicatively and to practice it and use it, you don't begin to make much progress. You have to have motivation, of course, as well, and opportunities.
What about just memorizing phrases or sentences?
I don't think that, well, it's useful to have a stock of language to call upon, but that's one thing. The other thing is being able to actually bring these out and use them appropriately in the right context, and that really comes about through practice and contact. So too much effort on memorization doesn't necessarily guarantee the ability to use productive skills. Let's
talk about TESOL now. You have been participating in TESOL program, and tell us a little more about that and how you were able to get yourself involved in that.
Well, TESOL, Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, that's a general term for this whole profession of English language teaching, which I've been involved in for many years. There are also national organizations in Korea involved with TESOL, as well as international organizations. And what these organizations try to do is to provide opportunities for teachers to get together, to look at problems that they have teaching students, to work with invited speakers and local experts, to sort of work on upgrading the professional standards of English teaching, and also to help teachers become aware of what the current trends are. So TESOL is a sort of international series of professional organizations designed to provide support for teachers.
When you said just now, current trends are, what do you mean by that?
Well, of course, approaches to language teaching change as we, nowadays we're making a lot more use of the internet and online learning and so on. And so that's the thing that teachers have to learn how to, are you comfortable working with digital support? Some teachers don't feel comfortable stepping out of the classroom and letting the learners learn in the media lab. They feel maybe they're losing some control over teaching, but nowadays, because of the numbers involved, we really have to make a lot more available online so that students can learn at home. They don't need to be in the classroom with a teacher. They can go online and do a lot of self-study activities, and the sort of resources that are being provided now are much more sophisticated. We have voice recognition technology. They can be corrected automatically by the computer and so on.
I see. Well, let's talk about interchange. How many levels are in your book?
There are 4 levels. So we take learners from, almost the basic level up to upper intermediate, as we do in my new series. This is the new series. Interchange has been around for quite a long time. So we've just done a 4th edition of it, but I've developed a new course recently which is called 4 Corners, just being launched actually this week in Korea. It's in a sense like Interchange. It's taking students to the same goal, the same destination, but a different way of getting there. So we talk about 2 destinations, 2 journeys to the same destination. So in terms of books like these, we try to find out what teachers are looking for, what students are looking for in materials, what are the difficulties that they encounter, and how can we address those in the books we write. We make a lot of use of video online support, self-study material, a lot of stuff for teachers. They can go online and download additional materials and resources for them.
Yeah. Okay, for these books, for what age group did you have in mind?
These ones are geared for learners from about 17, 18 up to adulthood.
Oh,
they're not really for secondary schools. That's a different type of book for secondary schools and primary schools, yeah. So young teenagers and young adults is the market these are aimed at.
Okay, there's only five more minutes left, so before I close, I would like to take a look at this question that was sent in by one of the folks who attended your
I see. Okay.
class.
Right.
On November 12th and 13th, the Cambridge Day event was held in Korea. The Cambridge Day was an event where English teachers and textbook writers gathered to exchange their ideas. The participants had a lot of questions about Jack C. Richards' book and his teaching methods, and they sent a few questions for Professor Richards.
I've just heard Professor Jack Richards' lecture about acquiring language teaching skills. So regardless of whether you learn 1 year or 10 years, acquiring certain skills are very essential to teachers' happiness and well-being, as well as for the students. But what I really wanted to know is Professor Jack Richards' opinion about basing all university lectures in English.
My name is Robert Ginn, and I'm an instructor at Gwangju National University of Education. Well, I'm actually using one of Jack Richards' books right now. It's called Person to Person, and I believe he's the editor, and it's quite useful. My students seem to enjoy it a lot. I think I'd like to ask him for some fresh ideas, some ways of stimulating more interest in the classroom.
Two questions there.
Yeah.
The first question is an interesting one about the role of English as a medium at university, because in many parts of the world now students go to university and the lectures are given in English. I was just in Turkey this year, for example, and in most Turkish universities the courses are taught in English. I didn't realize that.
And the textbooks are written in English.
The textbooks are written in English, and the students have to do 9 months what they call preparatory, to get their English up. They don't like it, of course. It's difficult. And I asked the Turkish professors, why are these courses all taught in English? They said, well, all of the staff have got PhDs from the United States and so on. They're more comfortable teaching in English than in Turkish. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, because if I had to learn my academic subjects through a foreign language, I think it would have found it extremely difficult. I don't know that it's essential for everybody to be studying their university subjects through English, and certainly they wouldn't be ready to do so by the time they've left high school and career. So, you know, countries like Hong Kong, which have always taught, all the universities in Hong Kong teach through the medium of English, and so do the schools mostly. It doesn't necessarily mean students graduate with a high level of proficiency in English, because depending on your subject, some subjects are very language dependent and some are not. Some may, you know, like economics and so on, are not so language dependent as, you know, history, for example. So it depends on what the subject is and what are the language demands of that subject. I think we should look at that policy very cautiously. I know at some universities in Korea now there's a requirement that the courses be taught in English, and so those are going to attract students who are very high academic ability and who also enter with good levels of English. It's a tricky one. It is, I think, becoming a trend. The use of English as a medium to teach academic subjects is becoming a trend. So it's difficult. Now we have to prepare students to be able to listen to lectures, take notes, and so on, do academic reading. So that's pushing the goals 2 or 3 steps higher. That would be my comment on that question, that I don't necessarily... I sympathize with teachers who find themselves in situations where they have to teach students to get ready for that situation. The other question the gentleman was asking about, he said he was using one of my books as a conversation book, New Ideas for Making Language Learning More Interesting. That would be another hour's session all on its own. But I think, you know, the secret of a successful language class is, you know, does it connect with the students' lives? Does it connect with them in terms of the difficulty level that the students are at? And does it also build on where they are? So when they leave that lesson, have they actually learned something they can take away from class, or if they just had a lot of exposure? So I think successful language lessons connect with students in different ways, their interests, their needs, but also their level of language learning. That's the art of teaching, I think, to make that connection. So when students come out of class, they feel it was worthwhile today. It's a challenge.
Some of your students might be watching, the students who learned English through your books.
Right.
If you want to say hello to them, or
well, I would love to,
yeah.
and it's always a pleasure to come to countries where my books are used and to meet students and teachers. In fact, I met some earlier today. I'm always pleased if people say, I enjoyed using your materials, teachers and students, I learned something from them. So I hope that's going to continue to be the message I get when I meet students. I know how difficult it is to learn English and how much investment it takes, both from teachers and students. So I wish you very well, and I hope every success is yours.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. And through this interview, I feel like my English has already improved. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can rewatch today's interview with Professor Jack C. Richards on our Arirang webpage. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you next time.